Hey yo players, this is your boy JQ Vault in conjunction with your boy P. Ross here in the Purple Underground. We're doing another movie review of a classic. This one comes from 1971, Carnal Knowledge, starring Jack Nicholson, who I say is got the second highest name on the marquee. Okay, we'll go ahead and say our Garfunkel. But then a close third to our Garfunkel would be a beautiful Ann-Margret and a beautiful Candice Bergen. A great ensemble of only 4 main performers. And this is a film that came out at a time when Jack Nicholson was really making himself the legend that he is. Now, a lot of actors get that title of legend or that I don't know, that act of being put up on a pedestal, but I think everybody around the world will have to recognize that Jack Nicholson is clearly the actor of his generation. No disrespect to Robert De Niro, no disrespect to Dustin Hoffman, but Jack Nicholson has shown his versatility, but at the same time he's shown something about him as an actor that, if I could compare it to the music genre, there is no other voice like Stevie Wonder. You might say, some might argue and say there might be better voices or not as good a voice, but at the same time, everyone would have to say his voice is that distinctive that as soon as you see it or as soon as you hear it, you know it's Stevie Wonder, whether you heard the song before in your life or not. Or with Jack Nicholson's acting, what he came onto the scene with in the late 60s and then really exploded with in the 70s was a form of acting that it was method acting, but it was distinguished that it could only be done by Jack Nicholson. And that's not saying that other actors couldn't act as well as him, like other legends before him, but Jack Nicholson could show he could be subtle and getting a point across, but at the same time, when he needed to come forth with rage and passion, he could do that. Now the thing about this film that, in my opinion, is why it's considered a classic and while it will always stand the test of time is because the film was very prophetic. I can't think of any other film in Hollywood that portrayed the cruelty between men and women in modern day relationships as well as this film portrayed it. The director, Mike Nichols, took his time in bringing out the insecurities in all of his actors to the point where he could show things that anybody that's over the age of 23, 24, that's been in at least a semi-serious relationship. Now, for you young viewers and the teenage thing and teenage puppy love, okay, enjoy yourselves. But the majority of the people in America, even today, have either been in a failed marriage or in a failed living relationship with someone. And when this started to really become part of the landscape after the sexual revolution of the 60s, you start to have these casualties of this craziness where there are no guidelines and no real rule book to what is a relationship. Now, of course, you got people who write books and do bestsellers about relationships and this and that, but there is no written law about how a man is supposed to treat a woman other than what some might say is common decency. And there is no true law saying how a woman could be or how she should be toward a man in a relationship other than what some would say was only proper for a woman to do. Now I'm speaking strictly in a natural sense. I'm not going in the spiritual level. I'm just saying in a natural sense. And this movie really portrayed that. And the thing about Jack Nicholson and Art Garfunkel, they really sort of personified the way a lot of up-and-coming men have their minds in American society, and it crosses our color lines, have their minds programmed to be that ultra male, alpha male sexual persona within a character of the successful American male in the world of business. Now, in this particular movie, Jack Nicholson who becomes a lawyer, and Art Garfunkel becomes a doctor. But we come into the movie in the beginning where both of them are starting to come into the apprenticeship, if you will, of their future professions, because they're both studying for this in college. And the movie opens with some of the most sexual frankness that you'll ever hear in any film, especially for this time, 1971. It was like the director, Mike Nichols, was saying, okay, the time is now for me to just let it all out. He had already did The Graduate in '67 with Dustin Hoffman, but that was sort of tongue-in-cheek and a lot of subtle stuff. But this film that came out in '71, with the very opening scenes, you know that this is not some Hollywood formula film about boy meets girl, boy becomes a hero and takes the girl away and rides off into the sunset. No, this was dealing with the nitty-gritty of the concept of men being programmed by the society they've grown up in to be very, I'll go ahead and say the word, predatory toward the opposite sex. Not even if not in the case of a bedpost notch or anything like that, but predatory into getting what their needs are and putting the needs of the woman as secondary. And I really like the way Jack Nicholson and Art Garfunkel express themselves, the way men express themselves toward women and what they want, not really concerned about what a woman's needs are. And this was, I will go ahead and say also, almost like a precursor for the enormous divorce rate that's in the United States of America today. And since we know that over half of the marriages in this country end in divorce, then you go into all the people that have lived together, and in some instances that was just as intimate as a marriage. Those things that failed, or those relationships rather that failed, we were getting already something telling us this was coming down the road when this film came out in 1971. In my estimation, the best way to size up the first 40 minutes of the film brings to my mind something that happened back in 1992 when, at that time, candidate Bill Clinton was running for president, and he had already announced that Al Gore was his running mate. There was a woman who wasn't a celebrity or anything, but she had some kind of significance. What it was, I can't remember. But the question was asked to her about the two candidates, and she put it like this. She said, Bill Clinton would be the type of man that I will go out with, but Al Gore will be the kind of man I would marry. Now, to a novice who was a male at that time, and any other male who might be a novice, it kind of works on your mind a little bit like, now the man that's the president, you would only want to go out with him, but the vice president you want to marry. But she wasn't getting into the status of the two men. She was getting into the personality. And if you all remember at that time, Bill Clinton had started to gather a reputation, which to some extent was justified later on with the whole Monica Lewinsky thing. But he was already being labeled as a womanizer. But in this movie, and the reason why I use that as an example, Candice Bergen was the object of desire for both Jack Nicholson and Art Garfunkel. And what they had done by both basically going after her predatory, like I said, they had created a new breed of woman. Now, or at least at that time, and even into today, you have women who can now compartmentalize their affections, or they can go out with a date with a guy they know is Mr. Wrong, do all the sexual things that that man may want them to do. I mean, be straight sexual freaky. But then the man that they want to marry, they will present themselves rather to that man almost like a chaste virgin. And in the movie, Candice Bergen is having a explicit sexual relationship with Jack Nicholson, but at the whole time she's double dating, she's acting like a virgin to Art Garfunkel. So Art Garfunkel actually thinks he's got some woman that's a virgin, and Jack Nicholson knows all along that they're doing everything. But the key of the movie, what made it so, the twist of it was Jack Nicholson never let on to Art Garfunkel, his best friend, that they were dating the same girl. But American men, in this case, Nicholson and Garfunkel, they had basically created this type of woman. While a woman can actually split herself into dual personalities, where she can have her freak for her boyfriend, and then without any shame, have that man that she wants to be, that she wants him to look at her as someone to put up on a pedestal, and act as if there's all this virtue and all this naivete, when in reality, she's already created a split personality. And this was very keen for Mike Nichols to present this, and the audience got it. They understood what was going on at the time. We're talking about 1971 against the backdrop of the sexual revolution in the 60s. And so the audience realized, especially women, what the Candice Bergen character was all about. Someone who was not necessarily split between two men, but had made a conscious decision to be two different people in one person. Now, it's not often, but rarely you can take an actress, and I'm speaking from a male's point of view. I love women, totally attracted to them. So, as a heterosexual, I'm saying it with a bias. There is something about a woman who is talented as an actress, but at the same time has been blessed with a certain kind of beauty. And as the phrase goes, someone being in their prime, it's rare, but sometimes you can catch a woman when she's at her prime as an actress with her talent and skill, and at the same time drop dead gorgeous. Perfect example, Ann-Margret in this movie, Carnal Knowledge. There are two shots that Mike Nichols captured on film that's going to be indelible as long as there's films around, where Ann-Margret shows her vulnerability as a woman because she has really allowed herself to fall in love with Jack Nicholson's character. And as so many women in the post-sexual revolution period know, or at least feel and believe in their heart, that once you let a man know that you truly love him, then it's all over. Because instead of him receiving that as the precious gift that it is, a woman giving her love to a man, being a player, would take that, use it to his advantage, and manipulate the whole situation. And the character Ann-Margret portrayed in that one shot where she's up against the wall, and yes, there's some partial nudity, and those who know Ann-Margret, she was blessed to be very well endowed and has a reputation, or had a reputation in Hollywood for being blessed that way. To be up against that wall the way she was, and her vulnerability showing, and her insecurity, and that weakness coming out, but at the same time her showing forth her beauty, all captured in one shot, to me is a shot for the ages. If you ever want to see a director to capture that moment and know that he's got something special, that's one thing out of the many things to look for in this movie. But that's one special moment. When you watch it, you'll know it, and you catch it, you see it right away. Now, when I was talking about catching an actress being beautiful and at the prime of her, in the prime of her talent, there's another, or more than just one, there are a few other scenes later on in the film where Ann-Margret really shows her subtle beauty as an actress. Now, you have heard the phrase, less is better. Overacting sometimes gets more attention and more credit than it should. To me, to really act is to, in a subtle way, portray someone and reveal someone in a way like peeling off the skin off an onion or peeling off the skin off a potato. You're showing what that person's character is in a subtle yet straightforward way, which it can't be, there can't be any dispute what you're really showing that actor or showing that audience. And as Ann-Margret's character realized that she was in a free fall because she knew she had this player, Jack Nicholson, that she was totally in love with, she knew she was at his mercy. And all he was going to do was just crush and break her heart, which she did. And she showed that with such subtle pain to the point where she allowed it to kind of come up in a simmer instead of just blowing off like someone that's, I don't know, bipolar. She just basically let the pain come within and let the pain bubble up in her heart. And then we saw the pain come out in her face. And even if you're a man and you can't really feel what a woman feels, if you got any kind of compassion, if you ever been in any kind of situation where you love somebody with your whole heart, but you knew that other person was not going to return that love back to you, you can tap into her feelings. And she connected with a whole audience that knows what it feels like to be totally weak to somebody that you know you love and that you know they're not going to return that love to you. All right. Now, one of the most crucial scenes and most memorable scenes in the movie is a credit to Mike Nichols' ability and sense to know which way the wind was blowing, at least in 1971. Nicholson and Garfunkel had reached a point where they were tired of the women that they were with. And almost spontaneously, they decided that they wanted to swap. So we were about to have, from a man's standpoint, the concept of swinging into a feature film. And the way Nichols showed it, and it was good they showed it this way, he didn't show it the way most couples who are swingers, where they sit down and talk about it and get everything ironed out so there's no surprise when things start, or at least there shouldn't be. In this case, Nicholson and Art Garfunkel had no consideration for the women. Didn't even really sit and ask them how they felt about it. They just made the agreement, all right, you take mine and I'll take yours. And that really has a strong overtone to this film. I mentioned earlier about the predatory sense that the men had in their view toward women. Now you get to the point when the men have had enough of them, they just figure, let's swap, without any thought or any inclination of asking how the women even felt about it. And that really adds to the concept of this film, showing that there is a species, and I'm a man, how we are trained and raised in American society to have no empathy for the view of a woman towards sex, but only to feed our own selfish pleasure. And I'm saying that when I say our own sexual pleasure, I'm only saying it because I'm raised in an American male. I'm not saying I think that way now, but that overtone is in the film, and that is a subliminal message that's given to us as men as we grow up. And Mike Nichols captured that. He knew that was in the air, and he portrayed that beautifully in the film. Now, I mentioned before about Nicholson and the fact that he's a legend. Well, this film, it was part of the early films he did, or part of the films he did in the early 70s, which really cemented his place as a legend. There is a montage at the end of the film where all of this psychological hate that Jack Nicholson has for women just overflows, comes out. And he has no holds barred. There's no filter. He just speaks his mind. And that coarseness and that callous way of thinking toward women has an eeriness about it, because he has already been a player for years, a womanizer, a man who only seeks what he can get out of a woman. And now at the end of it, he's lonely, he doesn't have a companion, and he really truly hates women. But he says it with a lot of verbiage that is very condescending. And you can clearly see that this is what this man has become from the early part of the film, when he had some kind of feeling for somebody, Candice Bergen. But since that didn't work out, like so many players, after they get their heart broke the first time, that's it. They're players for the rest of their life. And there ain't no going back. And when you go like that, and you choose to have this block on your heart, where you're not giving it out to nobody anymore, you take the chance of becoming what Jack Nicholson became at the end of this film. Even at one point in the film, he let the rage come out of him because he had gotten so disgusted with Ann-Margret's character, to the point where he was not holding nothing back. He was letting her know how he felt, and it wasn't something trying to be constructive. It was just a man being cruel to a woman. And like I said, there's no other film that I can think of that really illustrates the cruelty that men and women have for each other and can have toward each other in the post-sexual revolution, modern day romance relationship era that we live in. So I give 2 thumbs up, and I highly endorse that you check out the classic 1971 film Carnal Knowledge, starring Jack Nicholson, Art Garfunkel, Candice Bergen, and the beautiful, drop-dead gorgeous Ann-Margret. All right, this is your boy JQ Vault, and I'm out.